Hello everybody, my name is Michael Laubscher and I'm going to share a story with all of you that literally shook our vehicle. And this was a buffalo ramming the front of a Land Rover. So as mentioned, a buffalo ran into my vehicle. How insane. And this takes me back many years when I was still a lodge-based guide at Sabi Sabi Private Game Reserve. And back then, me as the guide, we obviously in charge of driving the vehicle around looking for wildlife, but hand in hand with our partner in crime being our tracker. And a tracker is the individual who sits on the front of the bonnet. There's a seat there, and often guests would ask, like, oh, what's that seat for? And I always used to joke around, the block of cheese for the lions. But that's obviously a very important seat, in my opinion, the best seat in the house. But their main role sitting on that chair is to look for the footprints of any animal or subject or target species, should I say, that we are looking for on a particular day. May it be lion, leopard, wild dog, cheetah, whatever it may be. Their eyes are super sharp and know what to look for when looking for these tracking signs. At times they'll get off the vehicle, follow these tracks on foot. Sometimes we as the guides would join, walk off into the bush and try and find these animals for our guests. So a very important job that Fios, who was my tracker for the most part at Sabi Sabi, had sitting on the front of that vehicle because not only did he look for track and sign and had an incredibly sharp set of eyes looking and finding animals out in the bush, he also was a great human and helped me entertain and interact with guests on the vehicle and also off the vehicle if we stop for sundowners or breakfast or whatever it may be. So this cool story, it's a great one. It's one that I am still happy to be around to tell you all. And it's one that I often tell my guests that ask me about crazy things that have ever happened or give me some of the craziest bush experiences that you've witnessed and been a part of in your life. So on this particular day, what happened is I had a set of guests. Myself and Fios actually went out that morning. Our target was to find lion, and the dominant males weren't on the property for some time, and we were very lucky. As we left Bush Lodge that morning, Fios stopped me. We were one of the first vehicles out. Fios stopped me and he said, there's fresh tracks going across the road here. So we stopped the vehicle, got out, walked around with Fios, and it was such a great learning experience as well. You learn so much from these guys who've been in the bush for 30, 40 years. And so I'd always get out, observe, watch, ask questions. And we had learned and figured that it was the two males that had crossed over early in the morning at some point while we were all still snoring and asleep, had a drink at Bushpan in front of our lodge, and made their way north, further deeper into our property. So we went out that morning, tracked them, found them, which was really exciting. And we followed them walking along roads, marking territory for a great part of the morning, because prior to that, we were with these cats far in the south of the property where there was a major storm. And again, that's just so much more respect to Fios, weathering not only the craziest of weather conditions, but also being willing to sit around these big predators in the middle of the night during an electric thunderstorm. It's pretty crazy. But we were so happy to have found those cats that morning, followed them. And because we had found them that morning, we could have either returned back later that morning, or we had a great game plan in place, because the Lowveld and the area in the Kruger, southern Kruger, gets very warm for the most part. And these cats generally will only get active much later in the evenings. So even winter is hot enough for these cats to rather go and retreat and hide in the shade and only get active as soon as that sun sets. And this was our plan. We returned back to the lodge that morning, enjoyed our breakfast. I think we even did a walk after breakfast that day. Off we went. And that afternoon's plan was, right, guys, we're going to bumble around, look for anything else, spend some time with rhino, elephant, whatever it may be. But our biggest game plan was to go back to these lions later that evening so that we don't approach or spend time with lions that are just lying there doing nothing and boring and flat. Little did we know that throughout the course of that day, there was a massive herd of... So these lions, let me start off by saying this. These lions walked very far north into Sabi Sabi's property, and then they turned west, and they cut all the way to Little Bush, or close to Little Bush camp. So in terms of distance, these cat walked a long way, but as the crow flies, not too far. But they kind of hunkered down on this big ridge. And then further north, adjacent to the Sabi Sabi property, there was a massive herd of about 500 to 800 buffalo that came down south towards a little watering hole right close to Little Bush camp. And then later that afternoon, they made their way to a bigger water source closer towards where these lions were laying down sleeping for the day on this ridge called Vovovopan. They came walking down to this water hole. They had a drink, and then they moved. There's a big open plain there that these buffalo then moved into to go lie down and rest for that night, because your prey species would generally go and sleep in open areas that aren't all too dense, because they can hear a lot better and smell a lot better. And if there's a full moon, potentially see a lot better. So it's actually a safer place for these animals to go and retreat to. But as we were planning our afternoon, we heard, as we left on safari early that afternoon, we heard that this herd of buffalo are in the area. And myself and Fee immediately knew that this is great news. This is really, really good, seeing that these buffalo were kind of milling around the area and walking towards the area in which these lions were sleeping. And this was our game plan. This is what we were going to do. So we briefed the guests and we told them, listen, let's bumble around, spend some time with rhino, elephant, whatever else we found out there, and only approach the lions a lot later, because they will probably only get active a bit later and possibly try and hunt buffalo. The guests were happy with that. So what we had done is went out, did our thing, bumbled around, and we stopped for an early sundowner. And Fia set up the snacks and the drinks on a table that pops up on the front of the Land Rover. And we'll get back to that table a bit later, because, yeah, Buffalo decided to headbutt that. But he set this up, beautiful drinks, and we didn't watch the sun set. We pretty much got into the vehicle and asked for a standby for this lion sighting just before the sun had set, so we can kind of position ourselves and figure out what's going to happen there that evening. But while we were having drinks, a guest asked Fios that at drinks that day, like, tell us, Fee, you've been doing this for 35 years. What's one of your craziest stories? And he shared a very similar one to which I'm sharing with all of you now. And it was an impala, or a small herd of impala, and there were two male impala ratting. So they were fighting and hitting horns and testing each other's dominance for the females. And all while this was happening, a lioness was stalking one of these males fighting, because all their attention's at ground level, their eyes, their ears, their horns, they're not paying attention to anything happening around them. All they're doing is fighting with each other. And so it's easy, or an easier target for these cats to try and tackle. And Fee's explaining all of this, and obviously the tracker's legs are dangling off the front of the vehicle, and he's got his little footstool to rest his feet on. But long story short, this lioness chased these impala. This impala ran away and literally ran straight towards the vehicle. Fios lifted his legs, and this impala had his horns down, and he hit the front of the vehicle. Bam! His horns got lodged in under Fios in the grill of the vehicle, and this impala couldn't get loose. Lion's still coming in, jumps on this impala. Her sister then arrives. They both grab it, detach, or his horns kind of detached from the vehicle then. And yeah, he kind of got ripped in two by these two lionesses, but literally a meter, not even half a meter below Fios's feet. So this is the story Fios told, and these guests are like, wow, this is insane. And we've obviously built them up to this point of, let's have early drinks. Lions are lying sleeping, but I can tell you now they're observing. They know the buffalo are there. They're already plotting and dreaming about a hunt. So we were getting these guests like really amped and like excited to possibly watch lions hunting buffalo, which is an insane experience. And so these guests are like super excited, super amped. They have their drinks, we have a few snacks, we set up and we back in the vehicle and off we go. I get onto the radio and I secure myself a standby and eventually get called into the sighting just before the sun sets. And these cats are already up, yawning, grooming, licking themselves, grooming themselves. And this is generally a really good sign, knowing that these cats want to get active, they're busy waking up. And at this point, as I'd mentioned, that big herd of buffalo came from further west towards kind of the east, almost central Sabi Sabi, drank water there in the heat of the day, lay down to rest, and then they started milling and feeding before. There was a big group of that buffalo herd that already settled quite far off, but there were still stragglers kind of spread all around us, including on the ridge that we were sitting on with these lion. So those lion were on a perfect ridge, and I'm pretty sure they heard them from miles away, knowing that this is where we should position because we've got a height advantage. Our scent's going to be blown over the top of the buffalo, and when these animals come in, we can sit from up here, watch them, see where they move, and then from there strategize and figure out how they're going to hunt buffalo. So we were in there, myself and two other Sabi Sabi guides, two of my mates, and we're sitting watching these animals, and it's getting darker every 5 minutes. It's getting darker and darker and darker and darker to a point where it was almost pitch black. The moon was just rising in the east, so there was a very bright horizon, but it was a very dark night. And with that bright horizon and that moon there, we could see like glimpses and silhouettes of buffalo still moving over this ridge, even though it was so dark. And the herd was thinning out, meaning that, okay, it's the last bit of stragglers, the older, bigger, tired male buffalo, the big bulls who aren't all too keen to move all too quickly and rapidly. And every now and then, we obviously make or try and impact the environment as little as we possibly can, because we don't want to give away the lion's presence. And we also don't want to blind the buffalo with the spotlights to give the lions an advantage. So you operate in a very ethical way in which Fios or one of the other trackers would just put the light down onto the ground, shine it down, and that dispersed light will kind of give you enough visibility to see, okay, the lions are there, buffalo are there. But as I said, we could still see the silhouette of a few buffalo coming over the ridge. And these lions kind of saw where these buffalo were moving, and they were kind of moving closer towards our vehicle. And these lions had positioned themselves, kind of hunkered behind two little bushes, waiting in the hopes that these buffalo kind of walked directly towards our vehicle and just passed. And we then started figuring that this is going to be the case, and the chances of buffalo storming and running into our vehicles is a good possibility. So Francois and Kwesi started up their vehicles and moved off somewhat, and I was the third guy to start up just to reverse and to kind of give way to the cats and the buffalo who potentially are going to run past there. Or not the opportunity, but give them that space to move through, run through, and hunt in, whatever it may be. And it was pretty much being in the right place, but at the very wrong time, because as I started up my vehicle, and this is how crazy intelligent these animals are, is that these lions knew that when a vehicle starts, the rumbling of the diesel engine will dampen the sounds when they take 2 or 3 steps closer towards the buffalo. And they did this. When Kwesi started his vehicle and moved, you could see one repositioned a little. When Francois started his vehicle and moved, the other one moved a bit closer. So we knew this was their tactic, but we wanted to do this quick and just get out their way. And as I started, there were buffalo fairly close to me. You could see their horns on the horizon. And as I started my vehicle, these lions felt they're close enough and they're going to initiate this chase, because they kind of flanked around and they were going to chase these buffalo towards us, hence the reason we try to move. But as I started my vehicle, the chase was initiated, and I was sitting there and Fios said, don't move, don't move, don't move. And obviously I'm going to listen to a man who's got 35 years worth of experience in the bush and swallow my pride because I've only been a guide for 4 years or however long it's been. So I listened to Fios. I stopped the engine and we just sat there hoping for the best. And all we could see was, because of that bright horizon, these massive horns of this buffalo appear into the silhouetted kind of skyline, drop down. See it appear, drop down. See it appear, drop down. And every time we saw the front runner appear, he got larger. And with every time his head bopped up, one of his mates popped up behind him. The total count of those 4 Duggar boys, those 4 big male buffalo, there were 4 of them that ran literally straight towards my vehicle, because my nose was facing them. The front of my vehicle was facing them. Fios sitting in the front, and these buffalo running. And I see they're getting closer, they're getting closer, they're getting closer. And I turn back. I tell my guests, guys, just hold on, brace. Don't put your arms out, legs, just sit tight. And this head pops up, drops down, and I just feel this gust of wind, and I look down, and this buffalo ran straight past me. If I had put my hand out, I probably would have lost my arm. He would have broken my arm. I would have touched this massive 800-kilogram beast who can run at 60 kilometers an hour, 50 kilometers an hour. And he literally just missed my vehicle. But as he missed my vehicle, I saw the second set of horns. As he hit the ground, he dodged, missed my vehicle. The first 3 literally just missed the vehicle. And Fios is sitting in the front end. I'm fearing for him. I keep telling my guests, sit still, hold tight. And I'm just watching this. And it felt, even though it was so quick, it felt like an eternity. I mean, because yes, they're a big blob of animal, but when they pick up that momentum, they're fast. They might look round and chubby, but they are fast. They are strong. It's a solid block of muscle. So sitting there, it felt like it was so stretched out. It just wasn't ending. I just wanted something to happen, just not what had happened to us. Like I said, right place, or right time, but the very wrong place. Anyway, 3 buffalo ran straight past us. And the 4th I could see was way too close in comparison to the front of our vehicle than his other buddies were. And he wasn't going to really have time to zip off to the left and avoid the vehicle. And all I remember Fios doing was lifting his legs up, and he turned them onto the bonnet, put them onto my bonnet, and the back of his chair on the tracker seat has something similar to the back of a chair. And he just held onto this thing, his legs up on the bonnet, and he's just holding onto the chair. And I'm seeing this, I see his reaction, so I kind of know, flip, this thing's going to hit. And this happened in a matter of really 5 or 10 seconds, the whole thing. But everything, it felt like a dragged out story, kind of like this one's becoming, but a long story. And I then still remember, I said, Fee, hold on. And I turned to the guests and I said, guys, hold on. And all I did is I saw this head pop up, drop down. And as it popped up again, he was right. And I could see, even though it was dark, I could see detail on this animal. He was that close. And all I did is I just held my head like this. And I just fell to the side, hoping and praying that I thought this thing was going to jump over the bonnet, maul and destroy Fios. But in his attempts to get away from these lion, fall and jump into where I was sitting, and then possibly jumping onto the guest. And you have all these thoughts that run through your mind. And fortunately, when I hit the side like it, kind of bracing myself, it was just this massive bang, like an explosion. Bah! And I just felt this rocking motion. And I didn't know what that was. And I opened my eyes, it was still dark, so I knew I wasn't dead. I didn't see the light and move there. But it was, I was actually quite scared, and I didn't really want to come up because I didn't know if Fios was still going to be there, if the lion was going to be on Fios' buffalo. I don't know what was going on. And I slowly sat up, and Fios, being Fios, he just picked up his spotlight, pulled his legs off to the front. He put the spotlight on and looked down at the vehicle, and he just turned back to me. He says, there's a small matata. So I'm like, and matata is problem. There's a small problem. And the front of the vehicle was absolutely destroyed. So fortunately, this buffalo didn't get on top of the vehicle and onto us, because I wouldn't have been here to share the story with you, but he smashed the front of the vehicle, and everything went quiet after that. Lions were standing there, eyes this big. Buffalo were gone, and everything was just silent. Dead silence. And Fios puts his light on. He says, there's a problem here, there's a problem here, my friend. I'm like, are you fine, Fios? Because he's so chilled about all of this. I'm like, Fio, are you fine? He's like, yeah, I'm good. Like, but there's a problem here. I'm like, clearly, but that's the last of my worries. Like, are you fine? I asked him about 3 times, and he's just like, yeah, man, I'm fine. Like, so relaxed. And I turned to my guests, and they're sitting there like big smiles and so excited, like, what the hell just happened? I asked them, are you guys fine? Like, yo, we good. Are you fine, Feed? Like, everyone was concerned about everyone. But everyone was okay. Except I think the buffalo had a bit of a headache, must have. But yeah, he smashed the front of my vehicle. So that little table you saw the drinks and snacks on where Fee was standing earlier, that it was still there. But the front of that Land Rover, if you had to flip the Land Rover that way to see it or see it from above, the front of that vehicle was a V. He hit the middle of this vehicle and it just, yeah, he destroyed it. This is like seriously reinforced metal that an animal running at full speed hits with his head and his horns, and he could bend in that metal. Was quite a thing. And when I speak of horns this big, if you look at this picture, this guest holding that set of horns was probably about my size, and you can just see the width of those horns. That is a massive set of horns. And you don't want that massive head, including the 450 to 650 kilograms of extra muscle and mass behind him carrying that momentum, hitting anything near you. And it did. It hit us that night. Lions were in shock. They ended the hunt. Buffalo ran off. I could barely speak. We kind of idled out of the area because we didn't really want to drive the vehicle because there could have been radiator damage, overheat the engine, and would have caused further problems. But we just kind of drove to a point to which it was safe. We quickly checked. Couldn't really open the bonnet, but the radiator wasn't leaking. I get onto the radio to our safari general manager, asking him, telling him like, and I was so shook, I could barely speak. And I told him, listen, this just happened. Everyone's fine, we're all safe. But except the vehicle. The vehicle is not good. Not good at all. And he asked about the radiator. Can it still run idle? He said, yeah, I can. And he said, just take it slow. Watch the temperature gauge in the vehicle, which we did. But it took us it should have taken us 20 minutes gunning it, getting back home. Probably took us, I think it was over an hour because we didn't want to hurt the vehicle anymore. But yes, absolutely loved the experience. I mean, this isn't, in all my years, that's the only time I've had something like that happen to me. And speaking amongst peers and other guides, doesn't happen all too often. But that day was bloody thrilling. I can still feel the rock of that vehicle. I can still hear the bang. And I can still feel a bit of the, if I may, PTSD from that moment because it was damn scary. And yeah, they are both lion and buffalo and any animal out there, really. They're forced to be reckoned with. And us as humans shouldn't push our boundaries and our luck to try and outsmart them and outwit them because what they lack in wisdom and sense, they gain in strength. So, yeah, a crazy moment from way back when. Big lessons learned that evening. But I'm very fortunate to have been sitting here telling you the story. And I would love to share it with you all again, maybe go into some more detail around a campfire one night. That'll be amazing. But until then, I thank you for your time, your ears, and for watching this video. If you have any questions or want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. But yeah, have a great day further, and we'll chat to you all soon. Cheers.